Now, for more on the Philippine elections and what they mean for the country's economy, I spoke with Marc Mealy. He's Vice President for Policy at the U.S. ASEAN Business Council. I began by asking him about some of the key issues in this election.
I think, both issues around law and order and the economy, by far, sort of the two key issues that I think that voters in the Philippines were very much focused on, and of course, which many of the candidates, I think, really based their campaigns on. There always are, I think, efforts in the Philippines to really talk about job creation and reducing poverty. And I think that's where, certain candidates did a better job of perhaps appealing to the minds of voters.
And with that being said, sometimes the everyday voter doesn't have the same interests as the business community. So which candidate was the business community really rooting for versus everyday Filipinos who, as you said, had things like poverty to contend with?
Sure. I think, the last 6 years of the Aquino administration has been really, I think, well received by both domestic and as well as foreign investors. So there was a big question on the mind of lots of business folks that whoever wins the election, would they have a good degree of continuity going forward? And I think for some, probably they thought that the President Aquino's sort of preferred candidate might be the best choice there to promote that continuity. So that'll be Mar Rojas. And perhaps one of the other candidates, I think, Senator Grace Poe, was also perceived as maybe the candidate most likely to kind of really maintain the kind of policies that President Aquino has been working on the last several years.
Now, being that Duterte is the one who really gained that momentum and ended up being the front runner, how do you think this election then will shape the country's economy moving forward?
Well, the Philippines economy has been really one of the fastest growing economies in all of Asia the last several years. It's got some very good fundamentals. And, you think about the business process outsourcing industry, which is a $20 billion a year sector, as well as the fact that the Filipinos around the world send home billions of dollars every year. There's many good things in the economy that I think offer a great foundation. So I think the question remains, whoever takes over from the next administration, will they continue to kind of a reform agenda, find ways to further improve the economy, and really help unleash some of the other sectors of the economy that are perhaps poised for growth, but really need some additional reforms to kind of really reach their potential?
Now, speaking of areas poised for growth, over the last few years, we hear a lot about the Philippines being Asia's next tech tiger. Why do you think that is, and how close are they to actually having that title?
Well, in Southeast Asia, broadly speaking, we're seeing a lot of strong interest in terms of these emerging startup ecosystems. In fact, there's a number of even U.S.-based venture capitalists based in Silicon Valley that have established funds to really find those next generation of entrepreneurs and startups. There's a firm called 500 Startups actually based out in San Francisco, which has both an ASEAN regional fund as well as investments in startups in the Philippines. I think what excites people is the fact, like in most of these countries, young population, demographically speaking, very tech savvy, and people who are really into using mobile devices and therefore can really tapping into that app culture, so to speak. And I think that's what I think the Philippines, like Malaysia, like Singapore, really kind of piques that kind of interest.
And Mark, as you're saying, you have all this talent in the Philippines. So is there any concern that there could be a potential brain drain with all this talent leaving, perhaps to go to another Silicon Valley?
Well, I think if there continues to be a good growth performance in the country, I think a lot of the young entrepreneurs that some of these angel investors are finding and investing in, I think their first preference will be look to grow these businesses in the Philippines, take advantage of the regional growth in the market in terms of ASEAN's economic community. But I think at the same time, I think this younger generation, particularly Filipinos that are all over the world, I think they'll always, I think, probably look to maybe where are the best locations maybe to create these new business ventures.
Now, as you said, the Philippines is attractive. You have this fast-growing economy. By some estimates, they're saying it could be $1 trillion economy by the year 2030. But then on the flip side, it has one of the slowest internet issues. So how do they remedy that? How do you keep talent growing and something as simple as the internet that you need these days? How do they harmonize that? What do they do?
I think, again, I give a lot of credit to the previous administration. One of the things that they launched about 2 years ago was basically an entrepreneur or startup roadmap. And in this roadmap, they brought together business and government and, again, some of the angel investors. And they really identified some of the key issues that served as really constraints on this entrepreneur ecosystem. They did identify the fact that internet speeds in the country were really some of the slowest in the region. And I think some of the elements of the roadmap, which they think are going to be important for, again, the next government or the next Congress. One, there needs to be some anti-monopoly efforts to kind of open up the internet service provider market, so you can get more competition in the space, and I think that'll improve performance and speed. There's also going to be a need for some additional sort of regulatory changes to really kind of make it easier to really start a business and sometimes even to really close a business down, which is really the kind of thing you find in most of the ecosystems where you really have vibrant startup cultures.
If you like what you just saw, follow us on social media and visit our website, cctv-america.com.